My name is Javor Gardev. I'm a stage and film director from Sofia, Bulgaria. And I was invited here to the conference that was called Festivals as Game Changer. I'm interested in this type of conferences because of a certain reason, and this reason is that when I meet Shakespeare scholars and people who are really into the text of Shakespeare, into interpretation of this text, into the knowledge about these texts, these meetings give me quite a lot of ideas. It started with a meeting with Professor Jerzy Limon from Poland, the late Professor Jerzy Limon. Unfortunately, he died, he passed away, but once he came to Sofia and he saw my production of Hamlet at the National Theatre of Bulgaria, and then we had this dinner. Then he was selecting performances for the Gdańsk Shakespeare Festival that he was curating. We had this meeting at the dinner, and he told me so many things that I had in mind while staging the performance that I actually understood that intertextuality and the knowledge of Shakespeare text is something that gives enough context of such people to understand much more about the theatrical performances than general audience can actually understand. Before that, I was thinking that there are some ideas that I can really transmit to the audiences I work for, and they're rather solipsist, or they're all only in my mind, and I cannot really make them clear for the audiences. But when I had this talk with Jerzy Limon, I actually understood that everything that I had in mind, he understood, and this reassured me a lot as a director, because I wasn't really believing this was possible. So since then, I'm really interested in participating in such conferences of scholars, Shakespeare scholars. They know a lot, and their knowledge is really inspiring. So this was my reason to accept this invitation and to participate in this conference. What happened at the conference? I actually had to present with videos and by answering questions from the audience, 4 of my Shakespeare interpretations. And in addition, these productions were also presented by 2 scholars, 2 Shakespeare connoisseurs. These were Nicoleta Chempoesh and Boyko Sokolova. And these 4 productions were Bastard, The Tempest, King Lear, and Hamlet. First of them, Bastard, was produced in 2001 in the city of Varna. This was a site-specific production produced by Varna State Theatre in the wine cellar called Dimyat. This wine cellar is 16 meters underground, and the temperature there is 14 to 16 degrees Celsius, and the humidity is 90%. So it was quite demanding place, and we put the audience there, well, audience of 40 people, and had this interpretation of King John. Bastard was a version of Shakespeare play King John, and I used also the text of Friedrich Dürrenmatt after King John. So it was Friedrich Dürrenmatt, William Shakespeare, and then there was also a text from the medieval monk Azzo of Moutier-en-Der, who wrote liturgical drama. This was a very specific political performance. It was on the Nietzschean side. It was quite a rough performance, but in the same time, it was politically engaged with the situation in Bulgaria at the time. It had quite a long life for at least 5 or 6 years until this cellar was sold and lately demolished, unfortunately. The second production I was talking about there was made in Turkey, in the city of Adana, one of the biggest stages in Turkey. So Adana State Theater, they were producing this one. It was of course in Turkish language, so I had this language difficulty there. I was kind of lost in translation. It was quite difficult to work and analyze Shakespeare text and control somehow the actions of the actors, their speech acts in Turkish. Also because most of them didn't actually speak English and didn't speak any language that we could actually communicate by. So the translation was there constant. I used to work with the dramaturg. She was translating all the time our conversations, and it was quite an interesting process. But in terms of language, it was really difficult. Nevertheless, it was quite a successful production. It was also invited to France to a festival in Lille later, and it had quite a lot of performances in Turkey. And I was finally pretty happy with this. This turned out to be a more visual production, so to say. Then this was 2004. Then in 2006 I directed a big production of King Lear at the National Theatre of Bulgaria in Sofia with an actor that I respected a lot. Unfortunately, he passed away. His name was Noam Shopov, and this performance he had almost 5 years run in Sofia, Bulgaria. Unfortunately, the production was quite huge, and the set was using all the mechanical possibilities of the stage in Sofia, so it was very difficult for it to tour around or to be presented elsewhere. The adaptation of it was almost impossible, but it had a good life there in Sofia. So the next one, the third one, after King Lear, was Hamlet in 2012. It had about 8 years run, and this is probably the biggest production of mine. 34 actors and dancers on stage. It was invited to the festival, to the Shakespeare Festival in Gdańsk, and we had this chance to use the opening of the roof of the Shakespeare Theatre in Gdańsk for the first time during a performance, during the prayer of Claudius, or his attempt to pray. And this was a remarkable event for everyone, both in the audience and in the crew and the cast of our performance. We had about 100 performances of this production that were played in Sofia, and yeah, this is it. This is the last one, Hamlet. Well, in the future, I have an idea about a Shakespeare production that is based on international cooperation, and this type of festivals are actually giving me the possibility to do the proper networking for that, because here all the right people are gathered, and Craiova is quite a nice place for that, because this festival usually has an average of 700 guests, and all of them are specialized or interested in these matters. So this is the right place to do the proper networking. And the next step of this networking will be at the conference in Gdańsk, right where the Gdańsk Shakespeare Theatre is. And I'm really happy that all these festivals, they have association, the Shakespeare festivals, and they work together. They're a network per se. They communicate, they co-produce sometimes. So I consider this the right time and the right place for doing this. And at Craiova Festival, I had the chance to see the performance of Robert Lepage. It was quite a nice performance, and I really admire it. I had also the chance to be present at the ceremony of his honorary doctorate. It was also very moving. Then I had, then I saw Koršunovas' performance of Othello, and Macbeth of Silvio Porcaretti yesterday. And I also had the chance to see some other performances that were site specific, or they're plein air, they were outside or at some specific places, for example at Valletta Towers. And I think this festival actually is quite intense, and you have a lot of choice, and sometimes you just don't have enough time to visit everything and to have all these impressions, but the choice is quite serious, and the selection is very precise. So it's really the right place to come in order to get acquainted with the latest Shakespearean based works. And I'm really grateful to the organizers, both of the festival and of the conference, for inviting me.